Good afternoon and welcome to Beyond the Lines podcast. I'm your host, Nikki Watson, and I am here with a very wonderful special guest, Tim Kirby. Hi, Tim.
Hi there. I haven't been on a podcast in a while, and I'm glad to be on this podcast with you today.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you. Very exciting. It is snowing outside. It is, we have to do, in the US, we have to do like a little weather chat, to break the ice.
That is, maybe you follow my work, but that is one of the weird sort of curses of American society.
Yeah.
The only things that are socially acceptable to discuss are sports and the weather, and sports is more dangerous if you have some relatives in Pittsburgh and some relatives in Cleveland. So yes, but I can tell you one thing that might be very interesting. In central Russia, in the part of Russia that's around Moscow, which in Russia is called Central Russia, even though it's not in the center, no snow, none. It's completely bone dry outside. So.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. It's a very weird winter.
Yeah, I was surprised to get the snow here. But yeah, it was a shock to the system. So school was delayed and then canceled. And so we'll try again tomorrow. But it's nice because they didn't try and do like a virtual day.
Yeah, that's always weird. In Russia, the thing, it's hard on the kids because at least for Central Russia, it has to be minus 35 Celsius, which is, I think, near the minus 40 or something Fahrenheit for school to be canceled. So it never happens because in Moscow, it never gets that cold. Moscow's always a little bit warmer than a lot of other places. But even in the Moscow region itself, it really never gets like crazy TikTok video cold, which is nice. But it definitely gets cold, but not like that.
So you don't have any snow days, like typically?
My children have not had a snow day ever. I don't think. Not in Russia.
And how many snow days did you have growing up that you can remember?
Oh, plenty, because in Cleveland you get a lot of snow. It might not be that cold in Cleveland, but you get the lake effect snow. So, and again, to explain to your audience, I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, and I moved to Russia about 20 years ago. And since then, I've worked in the Russian media and did some podcasting, write about politics in both English and Russian, and do a lot of movies and videos all about life here in Russia, including travel and all that. So, yeah.
Yes, I came across your work probably about, 5-6 years ago. And just like I said, when schools shut down and we were like, we need to start paying attention to like what's going on in the world, right? So really woke up to that. I came across your videos and Joaquin's work and some of the stuff that you guys did together and just following. And I was like, what? Tim's from Ohio and he loves football. And what's he doing in Russia and what's going on? And
Well, I love me some football. If it's if there's anything that has sort of maybe spiritually restarted my life, it's joining the Russian Super League. So maybe as you can see, there's a lot of gray hair on the side of my head, especially, but still at 44, I'm still blocking on the offensive line of the 6-time champion Moscow Spartans. So besides doing some more political and serious stuff, that's kind of how I get my kicks, stay in shape, especially maybe more mentally than anything. Too much intellectual work, I think, wears people down. It definitely wears me down. Sometimes you just need to slam into some other guy and wake up. I don't know, from the slumber of intellectual pursuits or whatever you want to call them.
I agree 100%. Did you always play football? Like when you were young?
Yeah, except one of the reasons where someone who might be one of your viewers who's completely unfamiliar with me, which might be the majority of them or the vast majority of them, haven't heard this story, but the people who are on my channel know that, let's just say the whole LGBT thing and a lot of gay shenanigans can happen in the locker room. And so I played until about early high school, until there was a very, very sort of gay undertone to everything that was going on with sports at my high school. And so I quit because of that. I did not, I'll put it this way. When it comes to homosexual acts, I'm not a giver or a taker. You know what I mean? I don't want to be involved on either side of this stuff. And so that put my career on ice, which is kind of funny because in Russia, there's a lot of sarcasm between like the guys about like making jokes as if someone is gay. And they're like, Tim, why do you never joke with us? I'm like, because where I'm from, this shit is real.
It's yeah, that's crazy. Well, I'm
Yeah.
sorry they lost you. I'm sorry they lost you to that.
Oh, well, I'm sorry because I lost the opportunity to go to college for free. I lost me a whole hell of a lot of money because I was expecting a lot of the problems that are happening currently between Russia and the West. I thought that would all eventually come to a head. Like you mentioned, that certain illness, which if you're broadcasting to YouTube, you shouldn't mention. I really thought, not that I knew that particular event was going to happen, but I thought that bigger social changes were going to happen much more slowly. And by the time I was an ancient man, there would be stuff happening like what's happening now. And so I did pay off my student loans like a sucker. So I lost a ton of money because of the, oh, you can't say that word on YouTube either. Forceful intimacy environment that was around the locker room.
Wow, so you're pretty good at football then.
Oh, that's another. No. Hold up. That's a. I don't want to go there. You know, I can definitely
still. When you were younger, you maybe not as good now as you're older, but you were very good.
There's different levels.
Yeah.
I was never, ever destined to play in the NFL. Okay. I'm not that fast. And even not doing a lot of sports as an adult, my knees were sort of blown out even before I restarted my career. So my destiny was I would have never, ever made it to the NFL. But there's a lot of people who play like Division II college who aren't particularly great athletes. Yeah. And as I tell people when I've kind of mentioned this before in a few interviews, is it's kind of like, do I think I could have made it to like Division II college football? Well, I basically played Division II college football in my 40s. So, I mean, in that sense, I'd be good enough. But I don't think I was, again, never destined. Not even the Canadian Football League would be way beyond me, even in my prime. Or I believe, what's it called? The UFL, like the sort of secondary league in America. That would also be beyond me. I could have never made that. The guys there are too fast, too strong. Especially fast. I'm slow as dirt. So yeah.
So did you play sports in college?
No. I went to a design college. So there were actually no sports whatsoever. So I did sort of what you would call today HEMA, as in historical European martial arts, sometimes of a softer variety, sometimes of a harder variety, some of that. But it was never super duper serious, organized kind of thing. More like a hobby. Then again, I think HEMA hasn't really translated into being like some sort of competitive sport that I know of, or maybe it is. I don't know. But yeah, in Russia it's brutal. Like because I did that in college when I first came to Russia. I met people who were doing that kind of thing. But you know, I took one butt kicking from that and I was done. Because they essentially use blunted, like real medieval weapons that are just blunted. Oh. And so you have to have an absolutely perfect suit of armor or don't get hit in order to like survive it. And I just couldn't take it. You come home with these like 6-inch purple welts from wherever you got hit by something. And it's that was too much for me. So
more aggressive than paintball.
Definitely. Paintball is very popular in Russia as like an office party thing. Like take the office out to play paintball and watch all the accountant women shoot each other. In Russia, all accountants are women. So it gives them the opportunity to get revenge on each other. But paintball is nothing. That live steel historical European martial arts is absolutely brutal here. But I've known people who can do it, but they all walk away. I'll put it this way. People talk about like concussion protocol, that stuff. I don't know anyone who's 40 who's done that, who doesn't walk with a limp. I'll put it that way. It's a little bit too much. Also, again, if we're going to talk about talent, I don't think I wish I could in my mind imagine that I was born to be some sort of like Conan the Barbarian, but my legs are, I'll put it this way, my hands and my legs are very independent from each other. My hands are very coordinated and very fast. So that's with American football. You throw the ball. If it's anywhere near me, I'm getting it because my hands move like lightning. My feet are like jelly. So when you're coming into medieval sports, your
Yeah.
footwork is incredibly important, and my
Right.
footwork sucks. In American football, I've just been doing it for so long that I've gotten better. But when you watch someone like the famous Jason Kelsey, the former center for the Eagles, if you
Yeah.
watch his feet move, every step is perfect. That's why he's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame if he isn't already, and why he was part of a Super Bowl champion team. The guy is an absolute footwork beast. Basically his coordination in his legs is like what Ronaldo or Messi have in the soccer world. I don't have that. I never did.
I did not realize Kelsey was that good in that way.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. You watch him, because I'll tell you one thing. If we're kind of going into the sports here more than the Russia thing, but just so you know, is when you play, I usually don't play center. I'm either the guard or the tackle or sometimes the tight end on a joyous day, but they don't throw me the ball 99% of the time because I'm slow, like I said. But anyways, when I do have to play center, because every offensive lineman has to play all the positions and know all the positions, it's different because when you snap the ball, you are about a foot or closer to the enemy. And when you snap the ball, it's like you're fighting with one hand. Because
Yeah.
when I'm going into a defensive player, I have both hands up, like a fighting position. And so you're getting hit first, and you're getting hit undefended on every play. So it is actually really, really difficult to be the center. And when you're doing that, and Kelsey was able to snap the ball and then do in Russian it's sliv, in English it is pull. He was able to pull to the outside and be like the first guy over there. That's insane. That's an insane level of speed and maybe more than anything balance. Because I could never even imagine being able to do that. I coming off as the guard, it's hard enough for me to pull just going over the center's butt to the other side where the other guard is, right? This guy's like a freak. He's going all the way out there after snapping the ball. That's nuts. Absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
He's
And I
sort of
mean,
my offensive line hero
oh,
in some
yeah.
ways, even though I don't play center most of the time, like I said.
Yeah. I mean, they really, these kids, I forget where he's from, but they've been
Originally,
playing. Yeah. They've been playing since they were little. I mean, the youth football leagues in the United States are pretty well organized and,
well, yeah, I can tell you one thing though is that even like I said, my school didn't quite offer the most comfortable sort of environment to play in. I can't say one thing though is I came from a school that always sort of won 5 games, lost 5 games, and to be honest, our program sucked. When I came to Russia, or I don't know, maybe here they just take it more seriously, but like the level of complexity, the level of what you have to do is just so vastly farther. Like like there's certain even high schools in America that are really famous, like LaSalle in Texas. Like it's more like that in Russia, where you really have to know what you're doing, especially for the top teams. Whereas our high school, they just kind of sent us out there to do stuff. It was very, put it this way, the amount of information you had to keep in your head was like 1/100th of what we have to keep in mind here. You know, all these blocking schemes, and if this, then this, and if someone says this letter, it means we're doing this, and then it's the whole like NFL. That's one thing where we're like the NFL. We have a very complex playbook.
so how many games do you play? And then we can get into like, I don't, whatever the current events are in the world, but
Okay,
how
football current events. All right.
yeah, right. What are you how many games do you play like in a year? Are you
Okay.
playing
Well,
like all
the problem is that everything in Russia is always changing.
Okay.
So about 6 years ago, when I decided to get off my butt and change my life and pick myself up after some personal problems, we'll call them, the league was organized into a super league, a first league, and a second league. For those who are familiar with soccer, first league and second league mean minor league teams. So there's actually sort of 3 leagues. Then over time, they boiled it down to having 2, just a major league and a minor league, essentially, right? And that's kind of the way it stayed. But how many teams are in each kind of goes back and forth, because the minor league, or in some points of Russian history, minor leagues, use 9-player teams, okay, rather than 11-player teams, to because it really makes it easier for smaller cities. But anyways, and up until this year, we've always had like 5 or 6 regular season games and then the playoffs. But this year, because and thankfully, I'd like to again shout out to the president of the league. He's done a good job of negotiating and essentially giving the sports gambling bookmakers what they're looking for out of our sport. So they asked for a full season. Well, basically, the bookies want all year round sports. They want all
Yep.
year round American football.
Right.
And with the rise of flag football becoming very popular in Russia, I think flag football is way beyond normal American football in popularity.
Yeah.
I think it's going to work out with having a 10-week season. But we have like 2 weeks. We have essentially 10 fortnights because there's 2 weeks between each game. So it's going to go about with that, with the playoffs. It'll be like an NCAA season for half the year. And then the other half of the year in winter, when you can play indoors and all that, I think they're going to really focus on like some flag football, which people do gamble on. And I think that that's kind of what the future is going to look like. So, yeah. So we have a 6-month war ahead worth of season. So where no one's really sure how this is going to work out, because usually when you have 5 games and then the playoffs or 6 games in the playoffs,
Right.
injuries aren't such a big thing. But we're thinking this year everyone's going to take a beating by game number 10. So.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
So we were talking about like the intellectual and like how this is like a reprieve almost, or well, aside from getting beat up, but so I guess transitioning into a little bit of what's going on, and I just have always appreciated your work, because you just because you don't always say because you're living in Russia and you have so much experience with understanding these things. And so I would just love to hear what you have to say about what's going on. And
I would say the one thing that I'd like to share with your audience, and again with my audience, where I've noticed one thing recently. I've started to do like kind of like YouTube short kind of things, although I'm completely banned on YouTube and all Google services. But things like YouTube Shorts. Why? Because less effort, more views. What can I say? So it's actually nice to be able to sit down and kind of explain one thing that I did do like a couple videos on, but they were, it was hard to explain in 2 minutes. Is I think one of the overall things that makes it difficult for me to really make comments about this whole big negotiating fiasco, because let's remember back to earlier in spring with Trump at the meeting in Alaska and all that. Despite the fact that Trump seems to be going all over the place, if you listen to the Russian side, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, has said through this whole damn thing, don't really listen to what Trump says. He even said that it's like, don't really listen to it. That's just whatever. But that's what you hear when you're here, right? And so there's also been constantly in the Russian media, they've mentioned that a lot of things have been discussed besides the war in Ukraine. So there's also been these sort of from the Russian standpoint, all sorts of background discussions here, there, and this thing. And as of today, you wanted some news of the day is Kirill Dmitriev, who's been really instrumental in these negotiation processes, has shared what looked to be a very well-made, potentially mostly AI or partially, well, definitely partially AI video that kind of showed Thomas Edison and Mendeleev like chit-chatting as if they met in real life about like the how awesome it would be to have a tunnel between America and Russia and all that. Very interesting. And that's good. We can always be afraid of hopium, but let me just put it this way. The one problem that I have to really comment on all these negotiations with all their nuances and all that is there are 2 things. Is that the greatest weakness of Russia is that Russians are terrifyingly naive. I know that might be hard to believe because Russians have the stereotype of being really hard asses, no emotions, really cold-blooded, the greatest warriors ever, but they're stunningly naive, okay? And so if the West, well, we'll put it this way, if I was one of the evil sort of Brzezinski types in the West, some advisor to Trump, and I was to say, and they asked me, how would you destroy the Russians? And I would say, basically what they're doing, offer them peace, offer them this illusion of acceptance into the West, an illusion of peace and friendship, and then stab in the back, because that's what they did to Gorbachev, and it worked, okay? And in fact, a lot of the things that you see from the West are repetitions of the, the problem is in Russian, it's Gorbachev, excuse me, I'm getting confused. Gorbachev, but Gorbachev in Russian. So in the Gorbachev period, basically they had the manipulation of oil and all that, the oil prices. They had the Star Wars, the fake, new technology that they couldn't fight against. The proxy fight against the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, although that kind of winded down during Gorbachev, but you see what I mean? So one thing that the West is doing, a lot of this stuff from that like late 70s, 1980s period, also sanctions, has been like repeated, right? And now might be the time where someone will repeat how Reagan kind of reached out. And of course, maybe Reagan wasn't the initiative. He was a very good-looking president, but it's debatable to what extent he was really the president. To come in, someone like Reagan, and stab the Russians in the back. So that's on the one side. But on the other side, if Trump really is this person he's claimed it sometimes to be, or if there really is a MAGA, if there really is a force within the United States that kind of wants to take things in a different direction, well, then that force is going to be in a very hot, maybe not hot, active, not directly violent battle with all those forces that like to keep America involved in wars. They like to keep the Fed going. They like to do this, that, and the other, all the bad stuff that people accuse the CIA of and all that other stuff, right? And the situation would look the same because people like Trump would have to be kind of always constantly playing to different audiences, making sort of like the Pentagon think one thing, the CIA think another thing, rich people in Israel who donate money think another thing. So on the one hand, it's kind of hard to say, like I said in my one video that I released recently, good Trump and evil Trump look the same. They would act the same, in terms of this Russian conflict. Evil Trump would be trying to kind of he'd be telling his buddies there in the military industrial complex, this, that, and the other, but he'd be, of course, with the Russians, of course, we're going to make peace. We're going to build this tunnel. We're going to cooperate. We're going to be the best partners ever, stab in the back. But if he was also good Trump, then he'd be having to play to 17 million different audiences and try to keep them all happy in order to keep the United States boat afloat. So that's one of the things where I wish I could really put a big stamp down and reveal the true secrets from within Russia about what's happening with Trump and these negotiations, but I can't because I just don't know. It's hard to say. I sort of lean towards the Trump being on the good side theory more because he has been talking about the necessity to give up on being an enemy of Russia since even slightly before 2016. And usually people who are, let's just say, not the nicest people in the world don't make those kind of long-term plans. I'm not a big believer in 5D chess, and I don't think that in 2015 the people around Trump were like, we're going to come up with this lie. Then Biden's going to be the leader. And then we're going to do this thing where maybe you were shot in the ear or you weren't shot in the ear. And then eventually you'll be able to trick the Russians after they go in with their army.
Yeah.
That's what people think,
That's a really long, that's always been, as I work through this, again, I'm just listening to what you're saying, but what you've been saying. And then I watched your video on that as well. Good Trump versus evil Trump. And then I think at one point you and Joaquin did a video and it was like, does it matter? Right. You guys were trying to just game out, is Trump a good, is he a good guy or is he honorable in what he's doing or whatever? And it's what are his motivations? Right. Or so is he, but does it matter because the outcome is going to be, this opportunist perspective. So I know he'll say that sometimes, about how people are just opportunists as well. But then also, if you kind of just work it to its end, it's it's this big plan and everybody's in on this plan. And it's we're going to put Biden. It's they don't work that way. And that's a very long, term commitment. So, so I would,
that's also another thing too, is that we always forget that one of the criticisms that I have with democracy is that if we have this idea of democracy where people are supposed to vote for something, well, we always vote for the American president. Well, I can't anymore because I'm in Russia and they closed the mail service. So I lost my right to vote because of the special military operation. Interesting how that works out. But if I could vote, I essentially can't get what I voted for because there's nothing that binds a candidate to do what they promised. And also because the president of the United States is not the emperor. Even if he really, really wants to do good things, he has limited ability to just sort of unilaterally take action. But on some level, Trump's taken a lot of interesting unilateral action. Let's talk about how Trump is different. He's used the National Guard within the United States a lot and very aggressively, which is very interesting, especially within Washington, D.C. So that's also something different. So again, when people go with Trump is exactly the same, nothing ever happens. I don't think so. Because in the past we've had this nice cycle of like, a Democrat and Republican kind of argue with each other. Maybe they have slightly different views, but ultimately U.S. foreign policy and everything kind of just remains the same. Then Trump
Yeah.
comes in and he's like, we're getting rid of USAID. We are going to make this Doge thing to fight internal corruption. We're going to have people like, at least they inspected Bolton's house. I don't know if they're going to arrest him, but some people could say that was a show.
Right.
But factually, also, Trump has said for years and years and years, our guys are trapped in the Middle East. I don't want them to be trapped in the Middle East. And finally, because of threatening Venezuela, about half the U.S. military, or Navy, has left the European and Middle Eastern theaters. So in some ways, it's also like, okay, is this evil Trump who is going to very soon kill these Venezuelans who did nothing to the United States? Maybe some of them are involved in something narcotics, but again, that would be killing the 99.9% of them to punish the 1/10 of 1%, which is ridiculous and also very un-American. So he's either, evil Trump and he's just using an excuse to go kill people, or maybe he's good Trump who's just like, I'm going to lie a lot and I'm going to put the U.S. military or Navy by the United States. Ha ha ha, I win, you lose. You don't really know, and it's hard to say. And so one thing I also don't like about political commentators are the people who claim to know everything.
Yeah.
I'd rather say that I don't know what's going on, or try to throw out these little pieces of ways of looking at things, rather than claim that my channel on Telegram, Tim Kirby Russia Hardcore, which you can find very easily with a simple search. I don't claim that I'm the ultimate truth sage, and I know everything that's happening behind the scenes and all that. Because I don't, but I can certainly break it down. And Trump's presidency is very complex. It's the most complex presidency, especially his second term, is the most complex U.S. presidency that anyone who is alive could be listening to. I'm sure Abraham Lincoln had some tough times, given the circumstances. But after him, Trump's definitely in a tough place. Well, maybe Roosevelt #2 with the whole Great Depression thing. That was probably rough as well.
And with social media and just the information age, just added this whole other dynamic to what it is that Trump has to do. Like you said, is speaking, or the strategic ambiguity, and like he's speaking to a lot of people. I criticize things about Trump. Somebody asked me, like, do you like Trump? And it's like, yeah, I like things about him and I don't like things about him. And so, but he's speaking to different people at different times, so he has to do all that at one time, plus the social media and all of the virtual simulacrum and all of that. So it's got to just
simulacrum. You're a true Russian intellectual. That's when you know you're a Russian intellectuals, when you accuse everything of being a simulacrum. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah, and Joaquin will say, like, you can't, if everything's a simulacrum, nothing is. So I try and use it. I throw it out there if it lands.
Well, yeah, that's one of my favorite sort of political words. We have simulacrum. We have when Putin, a Russian politician, calls someone cynical, which is always hilarious because it sounds weird in English, but also it's so, because you can see what he's thinking, but he says cynical, which is always kind of funny. It's like the polite one. And also my favorite word of all, Malthusian, because it sounds exactly like what it is. And that's something I have to talk to about Russians all the time, because one of the things, again, about this more unique as a non-American perspective is that, again, how Russians are naive. Like, they've never heard of Thomas Malthus. They really think that the Western elite, no matter what they may sort of say, their opinions really, really are usually rooted in the Western elite following national interests. And if the Western elite were following national interests, for the last 2 or 3 generations after World War II, especially after the end of the Cold War, so that's 2 generations, the world would look completely different. Absolutely completely different. But they are convinced, and they have never heard of Thomas Malthus. They have very little idea about, like, let's just say, population bomb, population related agendas, this, that, or the other. So that's one kind of problem. Is I enjoy living in Russia very much, but when you're dealing with a lot of Russian people, their perception of the West is incorrect. And they really, like everyone, one of the problems between men and women is men always think that women are just like guys with, they're just guys with boobs, and that's how they talk to them. And with the Russians, they always think the West is the same as Russia, but just like with more money. And no, it's not.
Yeah. So what would you say are some like misconceptions or kind of different ways? I mean, and you can even add in some media stuff too of like what, how's you were saying like commentators are saying, or perceptions versus kind of maybe your observations.
Perceptions. Could you maybe give something more specific, like perceptions on what specifically?
Yeah. Well, I think that like um, maybe how Russians are perceiving like maybe Trump or the US versus maybe like how you would bet. And maybe the answer is just, we don't know, because it's like based on his actions or whatever, like maybe how an American views politics versus how a Russian views
Oh,
American.
here's a real easy one. With Trump, I have heard in the Russian media many times. Well, the Trump presidency, after about the first 100 days were over, well, the Trump presidency is a failure because he didn't end the war in Ukraine. Because for them, the war in Ukraine is the alpha and the omega. And in the United States, a lot of Americans, especially patriotic Americans, are against the war in Ukraine,
Yeah.
not from the standpoint of being sorry for the Russians who are dying, but more from the standpoint of, look at all of our wealth and treasure being ruined. I always point out to the Russians that there's a few photos from like those California wildfires. Who knows? Maybe they were made with AI, but I have seen across America fire hydrants that have been painted to be like the Ukrainian flag. And so there were some LGBT fire hydrants and Ukrainian flag fire hydrants, and people would take photos. Again, they could be doctored, but nonetheless, of photos of these fire hydrants that are empty and non-functional with this gay flag and Kiev flag with California and America burning in the background. And so for the Russians can't understand that the war in Ukraine is bad to many people in America, like, for people like America, your Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, hell, yourself, who else is against it? Alex Jones, all against it, but more so because it is a titanic, wasteful destruction of America. In the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so Russians really focus everything about what happens in Washington as if it relates to them. I even tell the Russians often that they have this problem of this obsession with the West. Whereas the way Polish politicians talk, they talk as if Moscow is thinking about everything that happens in Warsaw and Poland. That Poland is just like the big domino. That if Poland falls, all of Europe will fall. And the Russians are always doing these plans against Poland. Poland is never discussed here,
Right.
Virtually never. It's like some sort of weird anime where like one character is obsessed with the other character, but the other character has no idea this other one even exists, right? So that happens a lot, but that's like Russia with Washington for years and years and years before the war. So we're talking about your mid 2000s, 2010s. Everyone here was, always sure that, like, in Washington, thinking about us. What do the Americans have to say? What kind of plans? The only people in America who had like plans that were either good or nefarious was like the American elite. And again, the Russians have a lot of trouble because more or less Russians throughout, if you listen to Alexander Dugin, the Russian society sort of works this way. You have the emperor and you have the masses who are at war with the elite. The elites in Russia are always evil, and the emperor and the population are fighting against them. Whereas in the West, it tends to be the king and the elites against the population, sadly. And so Russians perceive American politics to work sort of like Russian politics kind of do, where like, that whoever's the president has to be like working with the people, and they have to think like the people because he's leader guy, and leader guy is with the people. Nope. Leader guy is not with the people. And in fact, the way the Constitution is written, he's not really even the leader to any really serious degree. Yes.
I see. Now,
yeah,
can it be said that that's where there is an element of that in the US with Trump? And I mean, that's what activated MAGA back in 2016, right? There's like an element of that. Mm-hmm. I think that is something, I mean, the inter-elite conflict is something that when people do this sort of black and white, it's all or nothing thing,
yeah.
That like Trump's all bad and everybody's on the same page, right? There's just this grandiose plan. Everyone's on the same page. All the elites act in unison. But I think that what brought the rise of Trump was the inter-elite conflict, to where they were in conflict with each other. And that's what we're seeing still play out today. So isn't there an element of that within the US?
Well, it's kind of starting. It's kind of started somewhere, again, around with the Trump sort of second presidency, more so than the first. I'll put it this way. I like the guy. I'd be really happy to give an interview to the guy. So I'm not accusing him of doing anything, shady. But I do believe his father has some interesting and powerful connections and money and fantastic background. I'm talking about Tucker Carlson. Now, Mr. Carlson and a few other noticeable people who you could call maybe Republican-like or conservative, or on sort of one side of the American political ideology, which is becoming more of the sort of MAGA ideology. There seems to be, even if maybe they're not the strongest force within the United States, there is a force in the United States that is pushing the agenda enough with the Russians. And again, not because, they're like, we love Putin, we want to model our new America after like Putin's Russia. No. It's because they see it as a waste of money, and also the whole thing of the Russians did what we wanted them to do. They gave up communism and they just sat there, and now we're screwing it up. So there is this sort of faction and a sort of realignment, because what did MAGA do? MAGA really changed our concept of who is who in America and who belongs to what. It really changed. It kind of was a very serious blow to the two-party system, not in the electoral sense, but in like the ideological sense, where it's not like we have the sort of like small business and business party, more religious versus a sort of labor party, less religious, roughly speaking. It's more like the pro-American party versus the globalist party.
Yeah.
And so that is a major change. That is very different. And I would say that there are a lot of people who have contributed to this MAGA movement who are definitely changing the game, and they are definitely backed by money. Again, YouTube and all these other social media platforms are not fair. They're not fair. It is not a talent thing. If someone needs to be made into being a superstar, they'll make you into a superstar, okay? One thing you also have to remember is that President Trump, after being canceled on all social media, started his own social media network, and his good old buddy, Elon Musk, who supposedly they had a spat with, but I don't know, they seem to have dinner together still, got X, Twitter, right? That was apparently enough to have enough control to fight against the mainstream media and the globalists and this, that, and the other. So there is, I'll put it this way, it's almost, when I talk to Russians about it, it's almost like there's a sort of quiet, behind the scenes kind of like civil war light that is happening in connection to this shift between the two-party paradigm and this like globalist versus MAGA paradigm. And there's something, going on behind the scenes, but it's kind of a big issue. We need some more questions that are a little bit more specific.
Yeah, there's a lot of hearsay, speculation with people, even like Marjorie Taylor Greene. That was a really big one, because people have a lot of opinions about her, whether she was the original MAGA that came in and.
Yeah, but see, with this stuff, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly.
You never know. And also, Trump changes his mind.
Right.
Who knows what's going on?
Yeah. So I guess as like far as some of the stuff that's going on, I know that Wickoff met with President Putin today. I mean, is there anything? And it also is like this time of year, we're moving into the holidays. There's usually like, I've learned over the years that I don't know how it is in Russia, but I think in Europe, it's like a very long holiday, especially with the calendars and stuff. I mean, is the holiday have anything to do with sort of the timing of things, or is it unrelated? Is it coincidental? Is it like, well, time is more of the essence and it's sort of not related to the holiday?
Okay, well, thankfully, in one way, President Putin is not like a lot of Russians are very, very, very obsessed with dates.
Okay.
And like on this date in this year, something happened. It takes you a while living here to notice it, but they really, really see deep connections with all this stuff. It's sort of like the people who read like the Torah and they look at the number value of each word and try to find all sorts of mysteries and stuff. Russians kind of do that with like dates. Anyways, Putin is not like that. He really doesn't play games of trying to get something done by some particular time. It's more just important to get it done. And that's one other thing that's probably one of the key reasons why he's a good leader is he maybe also as someone who really saw the Soviet Union fall apart, he could see this whole system of we have to produce 100,000 tons of coal by this date. We have to produce this much. It's like, why? Is there demand for it? Do we have enough men to do it? Because the Communist Party said so, or the organization planners, or whatever the hell they were called, right? So I think he is really rejects that type of thinking. So it would be very uncharacteristic for Putin to be like, "Oh, we have to finish this before New Year's to celebrate the holidays or something." He doesn't care about that. Thankfully. So he has some other negative qualities, but that's a very positive one. So
Yeah, that seems like more of the American thing, like that Trump wants to get this done before Thanksgiving, or how he wanted to time the I think it was like, I don't know, the 4th of July, or there was something that they were saying that he was like timing with or whatever. And then I was
well,
thinking, yeah,
I just wanted to add that, but that's also a very American way of thinking of things.
yeah,
With Trump is a very American leader in that he thinks, okay, we need to get this answer by Thanksgiving.
yeah,
Thanksgiving means nothing outside the United States.
right,
Like,
right,
what does it mean? Let's go up to some person in China and be like, "Hey, pal, but you give me, you got to get me these supplies by St. Patrick's Day." He's
right,
just like, "What? What?
yes,
What day? Who?" You know. So I think that was a little bit of a more classical sort of American arrogance, as maybe Russians might call it. So yeah, but no, there isn't some sort of like a timeline. That's another thing with the people who really don't see history as being something that's sort of organic and hard to predict, or having more like a set of tendencies. They see it as a set of iron rules. There are all these people who are like reading the tea leaves and Putin should do this by this date to achieve this,
yeah,
and that's how you get a lot of people killed. I've heard of various different opinions about why so many Russians died during World War II, and this whole you can sort of see it a bit in the battles in from the Ukrainian side of the being issued the order, not one step back, which sounds awesome. When Stalin says not one step back, it's very powerful and propagandist. But maybe sometimes you should take a step back. When the Nazis were at the gates of Moscow, yeah, there was a reason to. Or when St. Petersburg was surrounded, yeah, that made sense. But at certain points of the war, give up the territory. And then, like, the modern Russian army has no problem with that. Like at the beginning of the war, when they were retreated from around Kharkov, which is not Kharkiv, for the love of God, Kharkov, when they fell back from that particular area, of course, the Western media was like, it's a failure. They've retreated because they see the world as Putin as like this ultimate mega dictator. And it was a blow to his ego. But he doesn't care. Again, that's one of the things that is one of the why he's a good leader. Is he cares about the ultimate result being vastly more good than bad. Okay. That's sort of his mentality, and it's a very good thing. And that's how a lot of things in Russia work. It's like, okay, maybe it's late. Maybe we had to pay a little bit more, but it got done. And that's good. Okay, we'll go on. So, yeah.
That reminds me of the interview that I watched that you did with on the YouTube when you were talking about mañana, or you were talking
Mm-hmm.
about
Yeah,
what it is in the U.S. like we do it now, and in Russia
yeah.
it's like we do it like later.
It's this hour. Like the
This
word
hour,
for
okay,
now in Russian means this hour. In
okay,
Kazakh, the word for now is today, and in Spanish it tends to be mañana. So you can see that in Russia, there's not, there's across different cultures, there's different perceptions of time. Like there's this very viral interview that happened between three different African people, and the one guy's kind of like, look, we don't even really have a concept of like the future in our African languages, and it's kind of affects our society in a negative way, blah, 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 blah. That's really exciting. But in Russians kind of have that too, where things aren't really done instantly, or like one of the nice parts about living here is if you smoke, you get as many smoke breaks as you want. Like I used to work at this one print factory in the United States, and they calculated every minute you pissed. Like, fuck that. Sorry for dragging your show into the mud, but that's one of the reasons I live here. No one is going to calculate how much you urinate. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not in it. And sometimes in Russia, you know, everything in Russia tends to be a little slow. You know, there's people, you can argue, you can yell, you can fight. The bureaucracy, because of the super mega government bureaucratic site, makes things go faster, but things are still kind of slow. And they take time. And you got to submit your bureaucracy, and then wait, and it'll happen. And it sort of forces you in a more like kind of chill vibe. You basically, Russia's bigger than you, is something I've told a lot of foreign people. Americans and Anglo-Saxons come to Russia, and they always think that they can just like change things or make everything happen instantly, and it doesn't. It's a little slow. You gotta kind of have patience with it.
Yeah, we always think that we have no frame of reference for anything outside of what we experience. And that's not terribly unlike other people's experiences, but I'm curious if you were into history and such as you were growing up, because I just feel like, I mean, I don't remember a lot of what I learned in school. It's only when I started to have those sort of like the pressure cooker is on, like maybe when I'm trying to think of the moments where you sort of start to like, you're reading something and you're insatiable. And I think that has to do with the moment in time that you're in, the pressure that you're in. And I just think growing up, we just had no frame of reference. We learned about history. We learned about other countries. And it was like, yes, America's great, but like all these other countries are really great too. Like we would do a heritage festival in middle school, and everybody would like represent your country. And there was admiration for other countries and everything. But I think that we never really got to spend time we had no frame of reference. And I think that that's probably just being a child and growing up in the world that you're in, and your parents are working, and your parents are whatever your life situation is, as you describe some of yours and such. And then as an adult, you sort of just kind of wake up and you're like, oh, there's all these different parts of the world and things and perspectives. And like, this is not how everybody behaves. And
okay, well, first, before we talk about me personally here on this issue, on a more sort of global position, one of the reasons that America is so insular, if you think about it. Now, I've only heard me say this, so maybe it's just an original idea from me. Maybe I stole it from somewhere I don't even remember. But it's sort of my theory that because America was this nation of immigrants, okay, with that's not my theory. That's well established. But the thing is, everyone came to America for generation upon generation, and their lives got better.
Yeah.
So you have this sort of, kind of all-star team where everyone comes and everything is better. And that then sends a signal to the people who are in this territory that everything that's outside of it is worse. And it's worse in some sort of inherent or ideological way. So it's kind of like subconsciously tells you that, well, maybe I could spend a lot of effort to really understand the African attitude towards time, or the Chinese attitude towards truth, where something can be 70% true, 30% false. But F it. We're the best. And especially after the United States won the Cold War and proved that only a Western style system and only societies that adapted to a Western style or American style system can become wealthy and prosperous. What is the point of studying something that doesn't work? It's kind of like, there are people who I'm sure study like, I'm trying to think about it. There are people who study all sorts of weird historical, like nuanced historical stuff, like historical shoes. But like the three people that are experts in historical shoes, like, okay, that's them. But we don't need to understand how the Romans cobbled together shoes, and with the military shoes, they put like studs in the bottom of it. We don't need to know that.
Yes.
Who cares? And I think that that's kind of the American attitude towards other people's mentalities of, it's like, you can learn it, but it accomplishes nothing because we have the correct mentality. You know what I'm saying? Now,
Totally.
why?
Yeah.
Hold on, well, what? Because this actually is interesting because you're actually rarely. No one usually cares about me as a person, which is interesting. So this is a very different interview. So for me as a person, one of the reasons why I don't think that way is because I am from the hood, baby. I am
Right.
from the ghetto, and so I saw constantly throughout my entire childhood, and especially youth, like being a teenager, how everything in our American society, at least especially in that part of the world, in the hood, you could just see how we don't have it right. We have all these
Yeah.
problems. Like, for example, both when I was in college and when I was in high school, at two different pizza places near both, some guy died and just got left in the bathroom there for days and no one noticed, right? That's a classic. I also know a lot of people who are still as teenagers who worked at that pizza place and they all did coke while working, just straight Zelensky style coke.
Totally. Yeah.
And why were there so many people on coke and various other like hard drugs at my high school? Because we're absolutely in the ghetto. I'm talking about this. If we're talking Cleveland, we're talking ghetto, we're talking 90s. And I'm speaking more about the white people because ironically,
Yeah.
the black people in the ghetto seemed happier. But the white people in the hood were destroying themselves with drugs and all this because
Yeah.
we're miserable.
Yeah.
That's one thing that we refuse to acknowledge in the United States is that we are miserable and we hate each other.
Right.
Like people will always discuss, well, why isn't there more public transport in America? You know, you guys could have more buses and stuff. People don't want to take the bus because they hate each other. They don't want to even look or touch any other physical person that's on a bus because we have this vile, super hyper individualistic and something else that makes us all disgusted with each other. Because that's one thing. If you read Alexander Dugin, you can see that there were three systems in the 20th century. So fascism is very destructive because it tells people that there's just like pure race. And so everyone's in a purity hunt. Whoever's slightly impure has to be destroyed. And so everyone sort of eats each other. With communism, you have the sort of like, well, the Communist Party determines the future. All you are is a working drone in the working class, and you become reduced to some sort of like, farm animal. But when you have a illiberal society, the problem with it becomes is that the idea of having a society that's hyper individualistic, where the only thing in America that's sacred is the individual. You can poop on the flag. You can declare the same pile of poop to be your God, and that God is equal under the law to Jesus Christ, who died for our sins on the cross, right? The only thing that's sacred is your individual rights. So we turned every person into like this pseudo God individual.
Yeah.
And when you have people thinking that they're gods, they go out of fucking control. We are 350 million Neros playing that fiddle. Telling other people. It's like when Nero told, I forget which Roman emperor, whether he did it sarcastically or not, he forced other people to acknowledge his horse was some sort of minister or something. But that's what the whole transgender thing is. It's me going up to someone wearing a dress and being like, I'm a chick. And if you don't like it, I'll destroy your life. You see? So it's that stuff, because I had that unique sort of experience of being from this extremely poor, failing, and also black people in America were the real first victims of globalism. I think a lot of the social experimentation, or whatever you want to call it, you call it social engineering, you'd call it bad luck of the problems of like the 21st century, the whole destruction of the family with feminism, also a sort of cult of hyper individualism. They all got injected with that first before any other like community on the planet. So you could really feel all of the problems that are happening that came to the surface like during the of 2020. You could feel that all in the 90s.
Yeah.
And that's why I have a different view of things, because for me, it was obvious that America was just as flawed as anywhere else.
Yeah. And I,
Sorry, that was a long one.
Yeah. And I was just thinking about how, like, when you were saying earlier that you become insatiable for information or answers when you need help. And when you're in that even moment of crisis, or when you need help. And if you're raised to where like you don't have an awareness, and even some people that maybe don't have good life home situations, they live in poverty, they don't have that awareness of that their life is not good in a way. Like they don't have that awareness. Or so we don't have that awareness growing up, and then it's immediate. But if you have it, then it sort of changes the way that you look at things. But I think, though, that what we've seen over the last number of years, and especially in 2020, was that it's like, oh shit, like this is all effed up. Like
that's another problem is with, again, with the sort of insular mentality of the United States, is that people have a very difficult time perceiving that things could be different.
Yeah.
Like, how should I put this? If you talk about anything related to construction, everything boils down to, well, there's the building codes. Well, what if the building codes are bullshit? Like, as someone who bought a terrible house and completely remodeled it and fixed it in Russia with no permissions from anyone, and in Russia you can just build a house wherever you want with your own two hands. Why do you have to have these building codes? Oh, I guess safety or something. So the problem is in America, because we never go out of America and see how other people are doing things.
Yeah.
That means that since there's only one reality, we can accept anything that's terrible, absolutely terrible policies, terrible ideas, because there's nothing that exists in alternate to it. There's no other option. Sometimes you can see in America discussion about like the European healthcare sort of system that has sort of crept in, but that's just because the American system has so much trouble. And sometimes people take vacations to Europe. Sometimes some small amount of people who have YouTube channels, right? But other than that, we're so insular that we don't get basically, like, monkey see, monkey do is a great policy. Hey, you're in one tribe, you see some other tribe doing something, they're doing it right, you grab it. Well, in America, we don't look at any other tribe. We never do. And even if we think our tribe is awesome, which America is awesome, I like America, I'm not against it. I'm talking like Trump, I'm moving my hands even. But still, you should always be considering new ideas, especially when you see people like the Chinese who moved 400 million people out of poverty. You should be like, that was kind of impressive. How'd they do that? Or let's just say Russia moved a lot of people out of poverty, just not in those kind of numbers. I don't know. Or you actually look and see, well, which countries really do have the best healthcare system? Or you look around and you're like, okay, or one thing too, like in Russia, it's like, in America, you always hear the people beat the drum of like, you have to force people off of cars because you can't build more roads and get rid of traffic. Well, in Russia, they do. They did build more roads and they got rid of traffic. So it's like, but there's only America. And for liberals, sometimes there's Western Europe. So sometimes they look at Western Europe, but that's it.
Yeah. And Black Americans have really come to so much of, and I mean, friends that I have in person, I can speak definitely my lived experiences. Yeah. But if we also go on to content creators, and if you look at the statistics or whatever about the moving from the Democratic Party to Trump, that is a huge force to be reckoned with within so maybe that's good. But we're definitely in the growing pains of moving from when you grew up, when I grew up too.
But that's also one thing, like going back to what we just talked about there, like with the whole Trump and the MAGA movement, it's very good that people kind of want change. But the problem is they want change, or like sort of restore America, revive America. Yeah. But they haven't really equated that into like a particular methodology, or like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
And that's because there's no sort of like looking out or looking at other experiences and thinking like, okay, if we pursue a really nationalist sort of course, or sometimes people say we'll have MAGA will ultimately lead to some sort of Christian nationalism. Okay. What does Christian nationalism mean? How does that actually like play out? Is this a thing where then, because you have to remember, it's like, okay, Black Americans are Christian too, almost majority. So we have to do what? Is this going to be some sort of synthesis? Are we going back to like an apartheid state?
Right.
How do we get also everyone on the same board? How do we have this like nationalism that is for both, I don't know, Juan, John, and Jamal?
Right.
But it's also nationalist. I that's possible. I do believe that that's possible. But the problem is a lot of like the sort of philosophical, what are we going to do, has kind of not been a part of MAGA. Again, because we lack this intellectual curiosity to kind of like figure it out. I have it, but I'm a bad guy and I'm in a bad country.
Well, you're always welcome here. You're always
All right.
welcome here.
Well,
And so yes, so I guess we're at our hour mark here, but almost. So I guess we can just wrap it up. I wanted to go off in a different direction about a lot more of what you were saying there. I feel like that's a really interesting question and thing to think about. And I do think that the internet is, sectioning people off, right? So some people have good ideas over here, but I do think that people in real life, if they were allowed to have these intellectual conversations, that they would. And that's what I've always wanted to try and do, is bring us together. But the people that are having the conversations are separated into the political parties and stuff like that. So, but if you want to speak anything that came up to you by me saying that, and then if you want to just whatever you want to say in this next allot of time, please.
Okay. Well, so then let's see. Well, I'll put it this way: is one thing that, again, we could talk about this theme of being very insular and not looking at other things. This is not just America, but this is the whole West here. It's very frustrating when you kind of, again, watch things from Russia, where people have become more open-minded. Russia adopted a communist system, and they got slapped in the frickin' face. And people here can really see that there's more than one way to fry an egg. And so I was even watching a very interesting video about from some British guy, and he was talking about some of the cultural trends within various types of Africans and Arabs that make it absolutely vile to live with them. And he was talking about the inherent superiority of his Western civilization. Now, I kind of get where he's coming from, because living in African England was probably much like my African American sort of experience, and I can see that there's some negatives to that. But he forgets one thing: that arrogance of my culture is superior. Well, I'll tell you one thing: those Arabs and those black guys, they didn't forget how to get a woman pregnant, unlike him. You see? So that's another thing. Even I've told this to Russian people. We have discussions on demography. Is they always start to, there's these statistical, and maybe it has to do with the amount of money that this person's. The people who tend to have the most kids in the world, the last region of the world that actually has like a positive growth of, in terms of population, is Africa. So you can laugh all you want at Africans don't work much. There's a lot of dancing. They don't take life very seriously. At least they know where to stick it. And you don't. So that's another thing. I think everyone should be humbled by that. The Americans, the Russians, the Chinese, especially the Japanese and the Koreans, that we don't know everything, and we should never think that we know everything. There's no perfect culture, and the sweeping demographic crisis across the world, as in people might really start to die out in the near future, needs to be resolved. Thankfully, living in Russia, you're allowed to discuss that, and we're allowed to search for answers. Unfortunately, a lot of the people who are experts here are retards. I try to fight them to the best of my ability, because retards love their statistics. Love it. There's nothing more that people, because basically people believe that if they have a bunch of statistics, they have some sort of like magical control over reality, when I don't think they do. Statistics often lie. If you know anyone who's ever, or if you yourself have ever worked in statistics, you know how asking similar but slightly different questions can yield very different results. The war in Ukraine is a good example of, in the early war, when they did polling, it was sort of like they would ask people, should Ukraine surrender? And everyone, especially out of fear, would say, no, the war has to keep going. Should Ukraine immediately pursue peace? Everyone would say yes, because they won't get beaten by the stick of the state for saying that.
Yeah.
So you see what I mean? You could get the whatever. It depends how you ask the questions. And so it's very frustrating when I go to all these different like forums and conferences here in Russia. Is usually when I'm arguing with people about like what we're supposed to do in Russia. I'm somewhat important in Russia. It always is this battle of this hard statistical mass of bullshit versus logic and reason, which is the sort of school of thought that I think is more valuable. And I think that would be true for America too, because when you listen to Americans talk, everything is about percentages and, oh my God, there's this percentage of this group does this and this group does this, so it means this, or the worst thing, people discussing IQ. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so guess what? The Ashkenazi Jews and the Chinese have the highest IQs in the world. But If I got the assault rifle and they don't, guess who's the slave driver and guess who's the slaves? You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. Or like I was just even mentioning with African population, if they have sex with everyone and none of the other people do, their IQ didn't help much, did it? So again, I guess my request, I didn't think we'd come up with talk about this is stop with the statisticomania. There's no power in raw statistics, and people forget that.
Yeah, we have to use our common sense and our lived experiences, but also our primal drivers, as you.
Because someone just told me, I was talking to someone, I won't reveal who, someone who's I'll put it this way, his father is very important in the United States, and he even said that the way they used to measure like what's a middle class person has changed so much over the years to sort of, hide the fact that the American middle class has disappeared. Guess how much money a year raw, like before taxes, would someone have to make to be in the American middle class today, unadjusted from the original way they used to calculate it?
Oh, you mean like a total dollar amount?
Yeah.
How much they would have to make
a year? Just the husband, one salary.
Maybe 100,000, 120,000.
Yeah, good, 140,000. And how many people in America make $140,000 or more? I think it's something like 8 or 9% of the population.
Right.
So see, that's one of the statistics where it reveals more, or it shows how, again, the statistical manipulation. It's how do we calculate the middle class? Because what about the opposite? Yeah. Maybe in the olden days we calculated the middle class like idiots, and now they calculate the middle class better today, and I'm wrong. So again, it's very manipulative.
Yeah, and they've raised the poverty level now. I mean, our kids with free lunches too. Mm-hmm. Like we had to they raised the poverty level in a way so that now everybody qualifies for things like free school lunches and stuff like that. It's all in the funding formula, which is a whole other show. But yeah.
Oh yeah, it's like even with me when my children used to visit America. Like for sometimes we would all be on Obamacare, and sometimes only they would be because of how much money I make, which isn't that good. Wasn't and isn't that good. Right. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's just like it is a nightmare. But again, it goes back to one problem that Russia and America share. Let's end on this. Russia and America do share one problem: technocracy, statistics, and not like the technocracy where the Alex Jones talks about, where everyone is an evil Satanist and they use the power of technocracy to break everyone. I mean that someone who thinks that bureaucratic carrots and sticks with no sort of philosophical meaning behind them is the best way to govern. I actually think that it's probably like, one of the worst ways to govern. And so those kind of people are another type that I always have to argue with them. So maybe I shouldn't say statistics. I should say more like technocracy, which loves statistics.
Right.
Is the bad guy.
So how did you word that the U.S. and Russia, how did you word that?
Well, the U.S. and Russia, they share this problem. And I think probably a lot of societies do. I can't really confirm that because I don't speak Chinese or Arabic. But this technocratic approach, especially here after communism, is really not the best way to govern. There has to be more morals and underlying philosophy, because when it comes to just pure technocracy, you're just there's the constantly changing things, and there's no right and wrong. It's just someone said on a piece of paper, make people drink less alcohol. So like for Russia, you have this weird thing. Okay, it works, but it also begs the question why. In every region of Russia, so every state, all 89 states, there's a time at night after which you can't buy alcohol until the morning, right? And it works. The alcohol consumption in Russia has radically gone down since Putin's been in power, right? But at the same time, it's kind of meaningless. It's like, philosophically, why can I drink in Moscow and buy alcohol up to 11 p.m., but in this other state, I can to 9 p.m. And then it's like, but it's all, apparently the thing is they did research and they found that Russians tend to be very spontaneous. They're very spontaneous. That's the word, spontaneous, which is true. Russians tend to just sort of do things out of nowhere, right? And when you don't allow Russians to just like, let's just go buy 3 bottles of vodka and go nuts, and you don't allow them to do that at night, it does decrease their drinking, but they never explain it to the pop. It took me a while to figure that out. But they don't explain it that way. They don't explain the cultural context. They just say, after 11 p.m. you can't. You have to wait till 10 in the morning or something. And it's just stuff like that where even when it works, it tends to be kind of like vile. It doesn't sit right with the population. It's just like the emperor waved his wand and now this is this way. But then tomorrow it'll be that way. And based on nothing. And this way and that way and this way and this way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have to be able to articulate too the consent of the governed, but then realize that we don't have consent. And then can we get on board with things and how is it beneficial? And, what are we fighting for? And where is the juice worth the squeeze?
Mm-hmm. No,
that's just a bunch of sayings. We can just do a bunch of sayings, Yeah.
Whatever. Well, sayings are good. Sayings can contain a lot of meaning.
Yeah.
The juice isn't worth the squeeze is a very, very popular. We were talking a little bit of demographics related to demography and all that. That is a very common saying we hear on the internet because of the breakdown of like human relationships and maybe what someone might call the crisis of narcissism. Because again, when we make everyone into a super holy individual that is sacred, you're going to get a lot of narcissists. And yet we're surprised by this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the whole thing. Exactly. And that's a huge word now too. So it's like they create this society and then they, run everybody. Now all you see in your algorithm is like about the narcissist or whatever.
Yeah. Well, because that problem is going to continue because we're all because
that's what it. Yeah.
Told and raised to be egomaniacs, like without any sort of restriction on ourselves for the most part.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, my pleasure. This was a different one. Finally had some time to actually talk. No sound bites here today. That's a good
Wonderful. Will you come back again?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so where can people find you?
They can find me on Telegram. Tim Kirby, Russia Hardcore is on Telegram. If you look on Rumble, you should be able to find me. In fact, I should be able to find my own channel here. If you find me on VK, oh boy, everything's loading slowly. Why is it loading so slowly? I can. Whoa! It's going super slow. Why?
I want
to send you a link. That would be amazing.
I put your YouTube. Yeah, I put your YouTube. And
no, YouTube's dead. I'm banned. I'm off YouTube. I'm off of all Google services for life.
Okay.
Yeah. So here we have my that I just sent you my VK. That one I'm on Rumble, but I can't access Rumble without a VPN.
Okay.
And I'm on BitChute.
Okay. I will put your I will put all of that's where I saw you. Yes, Rumble. These ones that you posted to Telegram and then you because I remember I saw them somewhere else aside from just Telegram, and I guess it was Rumble here. So
yeah, I'm surprised. Rumble's Canadian, and yet it's pretty good on the free speech front, which is very weird because Canada is usually worse than the United States. But maybe the guys who own Rumble are really gonna fight for freedom of speech till the bitter end. I don't know.
I don't know either. I mean, that's why we started on Rumble and just recently started going to YouTube. So we'll see. But we'll see. But I will include those links in the description.
Okay, then I'll have a good one.
Thank you so much, Tim. All right. See you guys.